Would someone be willing to turn off these house lights, maybe? Thank you. Is that right? Yeah, sorry. Oh, yeah.
Take your time.
I have to do one thing, whether it's falling off the stage or tripping.
It's a lot better. It's like you drop your cards and fall.
That's true. It's less injuries. That's true. Oh, welcome everyone. Oh my goodness. We could just give everybody just a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
Find their seats.
There are, I see a few empty seats kind of in the middle here. If people want to sit down, people standing in the back, but you can stand if you want to, but there are some empty All right. So welcome everyone to our fourth and final panel for our exhibition, Time Creature for Itself, which will be open after this event. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can see it then. The theme of this show that we curated together, Maxey and Sheehan co-production, was interconnectedness. And so it's something we've been thinking about before the show opened, as we were preparing for it, and this whole semester as we've been teaching with it and presenting it. Our panel for tonight has a somewhat unusual structure, which we purposefully were trying to generate a bit of buzz and curiosity around. And our hope is that this structure will reflect something of that interconnectedness that we've been talking about, and will kind of not just tell you about this process of curating this show, but also show you kind of how that works. So that's our goal for tonight. We also, one thing that we keep coming back to, especially in the last couple of years when things have been hard, is this idea that a lot of what we do here at Whitman and a lot of what we do in our jobs is supposed to be fun, right? Like art is fun, working together is fun, and learning is fun. And so we really try to emphasize that also in this panel that we put together for you tonight.
That's right. That's right. Yes, thank you truly for joining us. And we have just been so grateful and impressed with the incredible show participants that have just brought their A game and taken it to the next level. We invited everybody to do something they've been wanting to do for a long time, or be daring and do something that they've been collaborating with someone else with, and it's just been such a joy and so impressive. And so I would like to acknowledge our show participants, and if you would, as I read your name out loud, if you would be willing to stand, and if you could all hold your applause until after, but I'd really like to just give them a big shout out. Those folks being Maria Lux, Daniel M. Forbes, Emily Samosky, Justin Lincoln, Lisa Dean, M. Acup, Kyle Peets, Tara J. Graves, Matt Reynolds, Amanda Lee Evans, Christopher Branson, Andrew Samosky, Charlie Bloomquist, Libby Miller, and Kynde. And in addition to those folks, also our super contributors, Travis Morgan and Elliot Rose, who could not have done the show without, and also our spectacular guest moderators for our first 3 Time Creature for Itself panels, those folks being Lydia McDermott, Cassandra Bakay, and Dr. Sarah Bolton. We are so grateful for all of you, so if we could just give everybody a hand. Keep the lights on or keep things running without our spectacular student staff with Maxey Museum and Sheehan Gallery. You all are just incredible people, and special shout out to Charlotte Flannery, Lee Thomas, and Yana Issa for their extra special help tonight. And of course, the technical all magic of the King, Tristan, Rupert. I can't clap. So yes, and we've also been especially delighted as Libby mentioned, and so inspired in the way that faculty, our public schools, and our community groups have utilized the show in really inventive types of pedagogy. The way you've allowed these themes to ripple through and ripple out has been humbling, and we just applaud you for, and are grateful for using the show as you have. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, we'd also like to remind everybody that we will have receptions in both the Maxey Museum and the Sheehan Gallery after this is done, with some cozy warm drinks and some snacks. So if you can, please join us for enjoying the show a little bit more before it goes. It's going to be sad that we have to take it down.
Yeah, one more week, so please
right.
come see it if you haven't. That's right.
Yeah.
So, Kynde, I would love to start.
Okay.
I would love to start this panel by asking you a question.
Please.
Could you tell us a little bit more about how you got into this line of work? Did you always know that you wanted to be a curator?
Thank you for asking that. I do feel like I've learned so much from Daniel Forbes and you and our wonderful colleagues. I also am grateful pretty much every day for the odd jobs that have led me here, as in waitressing, graphic design, a little bit of bedroom nurse activity. The foundry was great training. But I was talking to my nieces Trinity and Ava the other night about the sort of origin story of just really wanting to put on a good show. Like since I could talk, I feel like I just really wanted to have a circus or a play. I don't know if you're still listening and you did that, but I do think no matter what, you want to put on a good show. Leave a lasting impression, don't you know? Whether it be a concert on the main stage or wording on the last page. Ooh, 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 ooh. When I was a little girl. When I was a little girl, I thought to myself, oh, I want to build a world. And if you could make a castle from a box, a handmade from a sock, then imaginary's not pretend. And what about you, my friend? I always liked the party. You get together and celebrate the people you spend time with that made something so fine with. It's what I always wanted in the end. And what about now, my friend? You want to put on a good show, leave a lasting feeling, don't you know? Whether it be filming with the big boom or dancing in your living room. Ooh, 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 ooh. Looks like we're grown-ups now, but we find ways to dance in a box somehow. Not just a job to me, it's my philosophy. What will we remember all depends on what we do now, my friend. In order out of chaos to build a world, the big idea you start with and making all the parts, but standing back to greet it in the end. One more time, my friend. You want to put on a good show, leave a lasting impression, don't you know? And that means every day's a new play, every street's your runway. Ooh, 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 ooh. Learn all you can, learn what you like, do all you have to do to make it a show.
want to do, right? It is always about putting on a good show. There's lots of things, of course, that need to happen between that big idea that you start with and making all the parts of it. Yeah, lots of things that need to happen between the big idea and its realization. And of course, we're always considering a lot of different pieces in our job, whether that's the kind of macro level or the micro level things as minute as what font we use for a label, and then also big kind of pedagogical ideas.
Exactly right, yes. And I like to think of it as a sort of fractal-like equation, as in the smallest thing informs the biggest thing and mirrors each other, and in this sort of interesting loop that I believe can be felt by our lovely visitors. For example, sometimes you might be patching and painting a wall and you get a call from a concerned citizen telling you that you have angered the ghost of Ruth Fluno, an artist you love, and created a retrospective for, and you have to call your healer friend and have them sort of unhaunt you. So, you know, there's all kinds of internal and external reconciliation happening. But in the best of ways, I think all of our conversations, challenges, narratives, notes to self, are all embedded in the walls and breathing behind the work, fused under that foam core, all hanging together as the sort of DNA or the identity of the show. And I like to think that that's understood on a molecular level.
Yeah, we are, as we mentioned, we're juggling a lot of different things and juggling both the visions of the artists and curators and faculty curators that we work with, and then also the needs of this campus community, right? So we don't work at a commercial gallery, we don't work at a big state museum, we work at a college gallery and museum respectively. So we're always thinking about kind of how what we're doing fits in with the pedagogical mission of the college and our curriculum. So we're always thinking about making sure what we're doing is pedagogically interesting,
Psychologically sensitive,
ethically responsible,
financially viable,
practically feasible,
chronologically feasible,
and besides all that, in addition to which, well, remember that it's supposed to be fun.
Yes, and in the middle of it all, and especially with deadlines looming and crazy sleepless eyes, those sort of stretches of stress, sometimes I have lost sight of the big everything and gotten a little crazy from the minutia, but I have to thank you for pulling me out of that over and over, as well as our other lovely colleagues. Thank you for reminding me that this can be very enjoyable. So it's a real, life raft.
Yeah, and I mean, you do the same for me on an almost daily basis. And I have to say that, kind of echoing Kynde's acknowledgments earlier this evening, that this has been a really fun group of participants to work with on this show. And not only have we kind of appreciated what you all have brought in terms of just the being easy to work with, right? That makes our job so much easier. But also that you all have had really clear visions for what you wanted, and then a really clear kind of path through all of the details, so that we haven't had to think about as many details as we sometimes do. So sometimes we get some pretty wild requests from artists and curators, and our goal is always to make the vision a reality as much as possible. But you in particular have had a lot of really interesting requests over the years, right?
Yeah, the to-do list gets a little surreal sometimes, from tangible tasks to seas of stories and interpretive considerations, and while we always want to make dreams happen, and while we really always aim to say yes, and there have been some requests that have really tested me, and I would also offer that sometimes the demands are coming from inside the house, as in, like, we set ourselves up because we want to make a good show and be ambitious, and then it's like crazy making later, but it's our fault, and we do it to ourselves. In talking about demands, I say that, and I actually noticed my wonderful husband, Jeremy, and the awesome Walla Foundry folks, and I feel like you guys might be just, what was that about demanding artists? Yeah, hold my beer. they are incredible at that, but I acknowledge that it's all relative, but I do think we share the goal of creative problem solving within reason, yeah, trying to make those dreams happen while also trying to stay safe and sane, so, yeah.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention that our participants for this show also, we gave them the prompt and the challenge to think big and to think in interconnected ways. So not just like we'll put your work side by side in the same space and that's the way that it will go, but really think from the beginning, how can you kind of mark that interconnection, whether it's by working together or working with materials from the Walla Valley, as Amanda did, or with Maria Lux used taxidermy from the science collection. So I think they really rose to the challenge of kind of thinking from the get-go of the work they were doing for the show in ways that were that emphasized that interconnectedness, and we really appreciated that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have another question for you, Kynde. Kynde's done over 100 exhibitions at Whitman at this point, which is who better to tell us about some of the details that go into putting together a show than Kynde Kiefel. Could you talk to us about what it looks like when you're in the middle of that process?
Sometimes in the middle of the night, when all is quiet, when all is right, visions dance on the screen in my mind, revealing all it can be. I dream of opening night, all the people lined up outside, painting stacked against the wall, and everything still unresolved. But I gotta get permission, and I gotta grab the painting, gotta verify condition. Is the contract really signed? Gotta check the tech, gotta meet with the collector, gotta print out all the specs and keystone the projector. Talking to art history, objectual analysis, picking up the plexiglass for Lady Lux's creature class. Travis brings the taxidermy students are appalled, meeting at the confluence and writing on the wall. Ciphering the diagrams and formatting the files. Why do we want to do this? Wrapping things in bubble wrap and begging for a budget. Why do we want to do this? Breaking up the hypermeter, finishing the musical. Why do we always do this? Why do we always do this to us? Why do we always do this to us? Let's be under budget all on time. Let this see the physics and the fates alike. Let everything work out. Let this be understood and clarified. Let this see the magic and mundane combining. Let everything work out. Let everything work out. Let everything work out in the end. Oh, great Muse, we implore you. What might you ask of us today? Let all things seem possible. Through each challenge, find a way. Build me a crushing metal wave. Find them a real cow's head. Decipher the tech they don't understand. Comfort the crying artist. Be everyone's mother, father, therapist. Buy me a pig's heart on eBay. Run defense
felt when the artist shows up high on math and forged me a giant baby. Cringe through a lecture in which the guest promotes male castration. Sit through a 3-hour talk featuring so many dick pics. Try to solve a rivalry between fellow artists and field accusations that deadlines are too linear. Break the news that the painting has been stabbed by a forklift. And build me a tiny house. Yes, construct me a tiny house. Why do they always do this? Why do they always do this to us? Why do they always do this to themselves? Under budget all the time. Let this be the physics and the face of lighting. Let everything work out. Let this be understood and clarified. Let this see the magic and mundane combining. Let everything work out. Let everything work out. Let everything work out in the end. Nobody made us do this. Nobody made us do this to us. Nobody made us do this but us. Let this be. Let this be. Let this be. So, just give me a second here. Figure out where we are in this very normal panel. Let's see. What is this? Okay, I know. Yes. So, a lot of what we do really does involve a lot of trust. It involves trust in each other, in the people we're working with, in the process also, knowing that things will and usually do work out okay in the end. This also, what we're doing here is kind of a trust exercise because we are trusting all of you to be along for this, I think we can say, cat's out of the bag, unusual panel. That's all I'm going to say.
I agree. No, thank you, truly. We've been also kind of just talking a lot about what it means to be, to do our job, to be a curator, to put these shows together, and to work with collections. And what I think is sort of an interesting piece of it is if we've done our jobs thoroughly, it's usually an invisible hand. We try to honor the hand of the artist and highlight the thumbprint of the collector and make spaces that feel safe and equitable. But if we're successful, I feel like we're trying to step out of the way, but also frame things in clear and understandable ways. So we found it sort of amusing that while we often work with an invisible hand, we decided to make ourselves hyper visible in a spotlight. And so again, thank you. Thank you. For yes-anding us, and that was an encouragement that we extended to our amazing colleagues points for this show is the yes and worldview and mentality. And if I have one piece of life advice, it is to surround yourself with people who will yes and you and make a circle of yes and be like, yeah, and this bigger, bigger, bigger. I just appreciate all of you. You SN, my family SNs, my wonderful husband and our kiddos. It's like, yes, take it and run. And I just appreciate you all so much. You all deserve that. You deserve the yes and.
For example, when you're sitting in your office and planning events for an exhibition, and your colleague, and I honestly can't remember which one of us said this because it sounds like something either one of us might say.
Tracy,
how about if we? Oh yeah, maybe so. Yeah, it's the Muse. One of us said, "Why don't we sing our panel instead of speaking it?" And the other one said, "Yes, and now we have to write a musical." Yes, and let's get Peter involved.
That's right.
Not to like musicals, although we may have changed his mind.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, he stepped right into it. Right, I had a thought that I wanted to share, and I forget this. That's right. Yeah, so we, have been kind of a little secret about what we've been doing here. But about a month ago, I think we were having a drink after our previous panel, and I said to M. Cuff, we're going to do a Curators Panel with a twist, and without missing a beat, M said, "You're going to sing, aren't you?" Threw my beer in his face and ran away. I said, "No, you are." Saying what? So he was on the
super right.
Clearly, we're not as invisible as we think we are.
Not good at this.
They're on to us.
That's right.
Well done to us.
That's right. Well, I wanted to ask you if you, just thinking about that visible, invisible sort of dance that we do, is there an example of an exhibition where you feel like your hand has been more visible and you've had, sort of more visible presence? Yeah,
I mean, this current exhibition is an obvious one because we both have work in it, that was a little bit of a trust exercise too, putting your own work in, you show you're curating. Clearly the same kind of people who write a musical for themselves. Those people, obviously that one, but I think the show that I curated at the Maxey Museum a few years ago, the Proper Monument, which of course Maxey Museum is more of a historical museum, don't often have art in it the way that they do in Sheehan. So a few years ago, I curated a show about monuments to the Whitmans and kind of discourse around that called a Proper Monument. And that was really, so the Maxey Museum, a lot of the shows we do are either borrowed from other institutions, or sometimes I work with faculty to support their desire to show their research in that kind of material form. Like I worked with Matt Reynolds last year on an exhibition on the Compost Project. But in this particular case, it was a conversation that Stan Payne and I had where we decided that really Whitman was right for a conversation about monuments, and that it would be a good space to do that in the Maxey Museum. So that one I felt like I invested a lot of work in that, and it kind of bore the traces of my hand maybe more clearly, or my fingerprint, or whatever you want to call it, more clearly than other things that I've worked on in the Maxey Museum.
I agree. It really did, and it was generous. It was informative. It made space for interaction. It was what you do. It was fantastic.
You get it, the compliments. Thank you. What about you? What's the exhibition that you feel most that way about?
I feel like we did in 2015 we did a graphic novel show called Seeing Stories, Traversing That one was super fun, and I have to thank Daniel Forbes for allowing me to kind of go a little wild with that. And the idea that we were sort of allowed to carry out was, to me, reading a graphic novel or comics is a sort of hypnosis, a heightened state in which it feels like you are immersed in the book. And so the idea with that one is that we would make these giant books where the characters were coming out and they were the same, they were human size, they were looking you right in the eye, because that's how that I think is the feeling of the graphic novel. And so because they come in small form usually with a normal graphic novel, we blew them up and kind of built that show. And so I did feel like that was a fun idea that we were allowed to carry through and have, yeah.
Well, and I love the fact that you're talking about that immersive quality of graphic novels, and of course the piece that you created for this show is a big tower with a booth that you can step inside and then read a comic that Kynde wrote. And it has windows and characters at the windows, and it is an immersive graphic novel experience, right? So there's a direct through line between scene stories in that one, I think.
Thank you. I like that connection, kind of leave the groundwork.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Well, I would say that we are very lucky to work at a college because we can kind of stir in and work with so many different departments and get really interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. We talked a little bit before about the institutional context, but that's another thing that we want to emphasize is the fact that we don't just work at any institution of higher education, we work in a liberal arts college, and we often talk about the fact that galleries and museums are really kind of special spaces in that context because they do allow for the different disciplines to be brought together, different media to be brought together, and for those conversations to happen in different ways from other spaces on campus. And I think the fact that the first year seminars actually are probably the program, apart from art history, that use our spaces the most. And I think that that's kind of a tribute to the interdisciplinary potential of those spaces. That's been especially the case since Mary Roshko and Lauren Osborne, as the directors of the first year program, have really kind of encouraged faculty to use our spaces, to use images as texts, to use to really incorporate that into the curriculum of the first year program. So we've been really grateful to work with faculty and with the directors of the first year experience on that. And of course, because we do work at a liberal arts college, in this context, we're always thinking about whether what we're doing is humanistically relevant, Technologically feasible,
chemically compatible,
archivally searchable,
forensically retrievable,
biologically eminent,
categorically tractable,
linguistically explicable,
religiously imperative,
geologically possible,
artistically offensible,
sociologically pensable,
practically impossible. Along with that, and above all else, remember that it's supposed to be fun. Besides all that, in addition to which, along with that, and above all else, remember that it's supposed to be fun. Remember, it's supposed to be fun. Hey, Libby, welcome to show.
On the camera, as well as the amazing
please. Let's get some
Do we have some,
light up? Oh, yes.
I think we have a question over there.
Adam always has a good question. Oh, thank you, good idea.
So I'm particularly interested in sort of the area of the second song that you did where you talked so much about process. And in the office of religious and spiritual life, we're often thinking more about sort of the path and the journey even more than the destination in some ways. I see a certain similarity, I guess, in some of the work. I see parallels in the work. It's in the journey you shaped from me. What did you learn in curation and in collaboration? I just made that up.
What's this guy doing?
Yeah. Good question though.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Totally unexpected.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna please start this one if you don't mind, because so Adam and I are in a band together, and this is something that I think, like, both in our work at Whitman and like just playing music together, we've talked about that quite a lot, right? The fact that the process kind of is the thing. It is always kind of it's always a juggling act, right? Again, between those, like not forgetting to have fun in the process, because I do think that if you forget to have fun in the process, and you kind of lose track of the fact that, you know, the final product is really just a short moment in time, or a short, like, or a small, I don't know, spot in space, whereas the process is a much longer thing usually. And I think the final product does bear the mark of if the process is tense or anxious or so that's part of that thing that we're talking about, of like trying to remind ourselves and remind each other that this all can be fun, right? I think in the process of writing a musical together, we've learned some stuff about process and setting ourselves up for some, well, I don't know, enjoying, just kind of being along for the ride, not really knowing what in it, being really in it. Not really knowing exactly what the outcome was going to be, but being along for the ride.
That's right, and making peace with that, because I do think the instinct in the curatorial work for me is like, don't show them the mess behind, don't show the human part, but it is interesting and it is embedded, like we were talking about before. I even think like the audiobooks we're listening to or the music is all sort of built into that final product, and you're right, sometimes there's this like theme of tenseness and it all kind of plays into that theme, but I appreciate the idea of welcoming it as a gift. So I haven't done that. Yeah, good question, Adam. Thank you. So who else? You don't have to sing it, but Sally, would you like to sing? Hey, Sally. Hey, you. Thank you, Sally. Many of you likely already know this, but Sally is such a brilliant writer and songwriter, and I love that you're asking about the title, because you are like a genius titler, and so it's probably not a word, but no, that doesn't even, that's worse. I like that you think in those ways, and you are so good at that, and I appreciate that you wonder that. I would say, also speaking to the punctuation, so time creature portal self, I think our origin word was portal or bridge, and I love what Libby said, which is that all art is a portal. It's a kind of doorway. It's a kind of piece of permission to get somewhere else and somewhere bigger, hopefully. But we sort of saw each of these words as through lines, themes, repeated patterns. There was lots of creaturely exploration and interest. There's lots of internal, external time travel stuff. There's historical mixed with very modern looking work. And so those pieces all felt like they were interconnected and yielding the next, as in, Peter explains it much better than I, but he taught us what those vertical, what are they, not brackets?
Lines?
Vertical lines. But I think we were seeing them as almost like a triple equal sign, as in this leads to this, leads to this, goes back to that.
And each
So-
piece is equivalent, like, not equivalent, but like equal to the other piece. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you want to add to that?
I don't know. Well, I think, necessarily also this kind of show, because it's a lot of different people participating in it, it's also juxtapositions and kind of things come out of those juxtapositions that you as the curator don't necessarily control, and that's one of the beautiful things about it. Our friend Josh was visiting the show the other day, and he noticed a kind of a visual resonance from a certain perspective in the gallery that I hadn't thought of at all, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, well, of course that is, rhyming with that. So I like the idea of putting things next to each other, that juxtaposition, without necessarily telling people what the relationship is. That kind of this next to this, and you make your own stories from those juxtapositions.
Exactly. And you all are really good at it too. It's sort of a constant, wonderful, growing resonance in that sense where it's like, what's said back is what completes the exhibition. Like, everyone that witnesses it and then brings it forward and ties their own story into it is what makes it better, right? Anybody else have a question?
In the balcony.
I'm gonna go Gabe first. Gabe, you go ahead. Almost hit my mom. Yeah, that's how envious moms are.
I've got a question, I'll make it fast. Forgot all the words, so I'll pick them up. Why use a musical format? Why use yourself as a doormat? Don't get me wrong, I loved it so. Learned such a great deal and so much more. But why use a musical format? Why break the status quo, Matt?
Your favorite word is
Bormann.
I'll let you start this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not going to sing our answers to anything.
No, don't worry.
It's a really great question, Gabe. So now might be a good time to reveal also for those who don't know that our planted question askers who sung the questions just now, other than Adam, so Sally and Gabe are both in a songwriting group with Kynde and myself. And I think it's just something that we kind of share, and since we started working together, since we started hanging out, we'll just sing little pieces of things to each other to express whatever it is that's going on. And it's just been a part of our collaboration and our friendship from the beginning.
Yeah.
Part of that is a songwriter's guild, but part of it is just like, that's how we process the world. And then we also have a love of the same musicals. Like, we really, there's a shared love of Candor and Ed Cabaret in Chicago there. So we have a lot of, music is a big part of our collaboration and our friendship.
Yeah, I agree.
And so why not?
Why not? Exactly.
Why not?
And
Because it's fun.
Yes. And I would add to that, I do feel like one thing that sort of solidified our friendship to begin with was we were working with a somewhat difficult artist in the Maxey, and our way of coping, our sort of psychological salve was to envision a musical about how annoying the situation was. And a musical about curation that was all like very high drama.
Yes.
And a lot of things are
Expressive dancing.
yes, so much expressive dancing about how frustrated we were, and it really got us through. And it was so funny that it reminded, I think, both of us that some of it just all you can do is laugh sometimes. And so it was sort of a shared language, as you said too. So thank you. Good question, Gabe.
So I think we have time for at least one more question.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not sure exactly what time it is, but.
The balcony first.
We'll go balcony next.
Yeah.
We'll go balcony next.
Oh, we're taking the marches.
I don't really have a question, more of an observation. There's a matter that's been growing in my mind, and it is showing the fallibility at work. In the argument you've given, there's a point that's been forgiven, but it makes me want to go a bit berserk. Doesn't the art just speak for itself? Don't you just hang things on the wall? Too much collaboration stops the artist from presenting their authentic self to us from this mark. By hatching this feeling, I would be at least appealing to a common sense of calling what it is. Though I very much appreciate this chance to appreciate myself to all my old professors here. It's true, this conversation gives a bit of demonstration to the idea curators play a basic need. After all, if we all knew at first that truly would mean the worst, to think we're only pure biography. And I really could go on and on, but here's closing on this song, and so I think I ought to end it here.
Bradley, is that maybe we could talk about this at the reception. Email or your email is good. You can write a thank you for your comments. We'll take that into account.
Okay.
Okay, Sarah, are you gonna
Stop right there. I gotta know right now. Before we go any further, can you talk to me about the synchronous and the asynchronous performance? Because you talked about the comics show that you were such an integral part of, Kynde, but you also drew to live music for that comics show. So I feel this beautiful piece back there and connection in that past. And when you're planning an exhibit, and when you're thinking about people who are having, in fact, a real-time experience, but you're planning it asynchronously, and now you're coming full circle to a synchronous experience that I am very grateful for. That's why I want to know right now. Do you love me? No.
I love you. Sarah, that's amazing. I so appreciate your way of connecting things. That's fantastic. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's. I don't know if it's a line that's so good. Yeah.
We didn't prepare for that question.
Yeah, we can answer a real question. Yeah, that's a great question though. I'm trying to answer it, you know.
No.
But I appreciate that thought, and you're absolutely right. Sarah created a drawing concert with live music, and it was something we need to bring back. Like you said, it's interwoven in everything, and I think we all respond to it in different ways, but those ways that disciplines sort of make each other stronger by their presence, I feel like there's just something going back to the sort of hypnosis of mixing pictures and writing. There's something about getting music, even in the gallery space, that puts this layer of magic on it. So I feel like we should do it more. I appreciate your thought. Thank you, Sarah. Anybody else? Anybody? You don't have to sing it. Ella! Would you like that last thing?
How long have you been dreaming of doing, like, singing a presentation for a whole audience?
Our whole life. What happens when people who secretly have like a bit of an aspiration to be Broadway stars end up being curators instead? Yeah, you're like, make this happen.
But yeah, great, like, I think from the get.
It's funny that you asked that question because this last summer, this is actually my second musical this year. Because last summer I wrote a mini musical with my siblings to celebrate my parents' 70th birthday, which was definitely a case of the punishment fitting the crime. They had it coming along. I've kind of always done that kind of thing. Yeah, it feels like a very deeply ingrained way of working with people and of processing the world.
I agree. Yeah, it's kind of your origin story. I will also shout out Dan again. Dan did a musical I wrote in college 20 years ago, and the fact that he's willing to come back for more is a really nice thing. But I will also say I feel like my wonderful parents have had such a great sense of that. One of our traditions is to read a Harlequin romance aloud when we're camping. I remember one particularly fun trip, we started to write a musical that was about the Harlequin romance, right, Mom and Dad. So I appreciate the way you guys think and see the world in musical form. Right. Anybody else? You got it? Again, you don't have to think, you just speak it. Anybody over there? All right. Oh, sorry, yes. Please.
Wow. A great deal of art that you see has to do with personal appeal. So how do you anticipate that and think about what the appeal and the reception is going to be before you even begin and then as you're building a show?
I like that question. Thank you.
And I imagine you're talking about the exhibition because we are curators, not this show.
Oh, right, exactly, yes, that's right. Right, that's a great question. We do try and tie a lot of the look and the themes of our shows into what's being taught at any given time, but we also mix in, interests and suggestions of past collaborators or new collaborators that will bring a particular idea. Sometimes students have brought spectacular thoughts, as in the show playing the print. We had a student that worked for us whose mother was a master printer, and so that was a lovely connection. But I would say we try and make our shows useful in the pedagogy of the college, but also the surrounding town and region, right? And then we are very lucky to have partnerships with places such as Tenasplicht. So we've been able to trade some shows or suggest things, sort of knowing the styles and interests of other institutions. And so
And for this particular show, it felt like Sheehan does a faculty showcase every few years. And I don't know, we started talking about it. I don't work with Sheehan, but I talk to Kynde a lot sometimes. Yeah. But I work with Kynde a lot and talk to her a lot. And we kind of hit on this idea of expanding the idea of the show beyond faculty to include staff, but also beyond the Sheehan to include the Maxey Museum, and then to emphasize interconnectedness. I think because of kind of the moment that we are in time when, coming out of COVID, or I should say coming out of the isolation, the more isolated parts of COVID, and kind of having spent so much time online, really feeling a need for connection and a need for being in spaces together, and also a need to kind of spell that out, even though sometimes that feels a little heavy-handed, but like a need to say, hey, it's okay to be back in the space together, and it's okay to kind of work together, and in fact, it can be a source of a lot of joy.
Yeah, agreed. I like that note. Shall we end on that, Julie?
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. You are such our favorite people. We are so grateful to you for joining us this evening, and please enjoy some treats and warm drinks with us.
Yes, treats and warm drinks are in Maxey West and in Olin, not here.
That's correct. Not here.